Hey everybody, I'm Bede, aka the Terrible Australian of Super Podcast, and welcome to the 6th edition of my 2013 MIFF video reviews. For this one, I'm going to be talking about the films A Touch of Sin and These Final Hours. So let's get right into it. I got my good old trusty MIFF program right here, so I can tell you what these movies are about. First off, we'll start with A Touch of Sin. The blood hits the floor in this confronting look at modern China and the domestic conflict its newfound wealth has fraught. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, so forgive me. Following four characters from different provinces, A Touch of Sin tells the story of a miner as he revolts against corruption, a migrant worker who finds possibility in a firearm, a receptionist assaulted by a rich client, and a young factory worker desperate to improve his situation. You know what? I have to say that this film is ambitious. It's a very angry film, and I mean that in a way that's complimentary. This is a very angry and very passionate film made by the film's director, Jia Zhangqi. I'm so sorry if I pronounced his name wrong. And you can definitely tell that this is a film that has something to say. This is a very, very message film, and there's a lot of passion, a lot of anger about the state of how China is today. And you can feel that in this film, and there's a lot of great filmmaking in this film. The way that Zhangqi directs this film is great. Like, there's so many great scenes. Like, there's a lot of power, a visceral power to a lot of the scenes, and also the film's violence is very hard-hitting and sometimes can be a bit shocking. It hits you, it grabs you. However, to be honest, I feel like this is not a very subtle film at all. Like, this is a film with a message, but it's done in a way that's very heavy-handed. I mean, very heavy-handed. And I don't mind a movie that has a message. If you got something to say, you can say it, but do it in a way that I wouldn't say subtle, but sort of, if you're going to do it heavy-handed way, do it in a way that's rather interesting. But to me, I kind of feel like this film was more, that the film's writer-director was more interested about the message of the film rather than the characters or the story. Like, even though there's, like I said before, there's a lot of great filmmaking and a lot of great direction in the film and some really good performances, I just feel like that the movie, it was just bogged down by its message, and it didn't, in a way, even though at times it can be compelling, but other times I just found it a bit dull. Especially like the first two stories of the film. The first one I was engaged by, but at the same time it didn't really compel me as much as it should have. The second story I found rather dull, didn't compel me at all. The third and fourth films, short stories I should say, were definitely better, but they were definitely better, and that I did find those two compelling in their own ways, but they could have been stronger though. And to me, and also the film, it's a very bleak film. Like I said, even though it's a very angry and passionate film, it's very bleak as well, and I was feeling a bit tensed up by it through the first three stories. But it was interesting getting to the fourth story, it would actually sort of ease down on that sort of tension, and it actually just, relaxed a bit. Although eventually that stops eventually, but it's a very bleak, depressing, very heavy-handed film, and I just didn't really get too much of, even though there are a lot of really good elements to it. I just feel like as a whole it just didn't really work. But you know, some people might see it differently. Some others might see it as a really great film. And you know, everyone's allowed to think that. And you know, I've seen films in the past where that are very heavy-handed, and I still like them. But I don't know. I didn't, even though there were engaging some great engaging elements to this one, but there are some other aspects I just didn't think really worked and came off as rather dull. Um, but you know, that's just me personally. But you know, I don't know how others will think. Maybe other people will think it differently from me. But I just think it was, to me overall, this film was just more concerned about its message and what it had to say rather than really focusing on its story or characters. Um, like it's well acted, really good direction, has some really great visceral moments sprinkled throughout. But it could have been a much stronger film, and it overall it just didn't really work for me. It kind of reminded me in a lot of ways like one of the first few films I saw at the festival earlier this year, Ain't Them Body Saints, and I think I used a line for that one. I'm going to use again for this one. It's a movie where I feel the sum of its parts are better than the whole. So take that as you will. So if I have to rate this film, I'm going to give it a 2.5 out of 5. Will I see it again at some point? Probably, yeah. Just so I can, you know, maybe I just didn't really get a full grasp of it the first time around. So who knows? But at the moment, it's just a 2.5 for me. Now on to my next film, which is the Aussie end of the world drama, These Final Hours, which actually made its world premiere at the festival this year. So I got, you know, my audience and myself, we got to see the film for the very before anyone else in the world, and also the cast and crew were there as well. So that was pretty cool. Now, what's the film about, you ask? Well, here's what These Final Hours is about. What would you do on the last day on Earth? With the end of the world only hours away, the self-absorbed James, played by Nathan Phillips, heads to the ultimate party to end all parties. On his way there, he saves the life of a young girl named Rose, who is searching desperately for a missing father. This simple act sets James on a path to redemption. As anyone knows, I'm a big fan of Aussie films, and I'm a full supporter of all things Aussie related. And I have to say I did like this film. I will say though, it's nothing that you haven't already seen before. Like, it doesn't really bring that anything new to the sort of the end of the world genre. And it's kind of funny, I saw an end of the world film at this year's festival because last year I saw another end of the world film, if you remember, called Seeking a Friend for the End of the World. And it's kind of strange that, funnily enough, both these films actually share some certain similarities with each other. Not just, you know, the whole fact it's about the end of the world, but there's certain little plot narrative elements that are kind of similar. Not to say that These Final Hours rips it off. It just, there are just certain things about it that sort of reminded me of that film. Hence why I didn't think it was totally original. But at the same time, I still did like it. I thought it was a pretty good film overall. And I think the main reason why I liked it as much as I did was a couple of reasons. I think the film's debut writer-director, whose name is Zach Hilditch, he brings an energy to this film. Like, he brings sort of a very edgy, kinetic energy to his direction of the film, and this is what he brings to the film. The film, like, Seeking a Friend while it was an end of the world, it was a bit more hopeful, and not really that bleak. But this one is not a film that's not afraid to be dark. At times this film can be pretty dark and very bleak, and it's always interesting to me as a viewer to see, just like, if you know that the whole world's going to end, how do people react? And pretty much, like as we have seen in other, they pretty much go batshit insane. Like, everyone just goes insane and just does whatever. And it's interesting to see that in this film. The film actually goes a bit further with that, and it does. And there are some really bleak elements to it, which I won't go into because that'll be spoilers. But you can imagine what the I mean, in an end of the world scenario, you'll know what to expect. And another thing I did like about it are the performances. I think everybody in the cast were all strong. Nathan Phillips, who's an actor I've been following for about probably whose career I've been following for about 12 years now, since 2001's Australian Rules. And he was also in one of my favourite horror films of the past decade, Wolf Creek, and as well as other films like Snakes on a Plane and a few others, and Balibo as well, which is another great Aussie film. He's gives a very terrific performance in this film. I thought it's definitely the performance of his career. He's great. His character has a very interesting and emotional arc. He is pretty much like this, as the logline suggests. He's a very self-absorbed, selfish person at the start of it, and it's during the course of this film when he meets this young girl, who is played by. I had to write this young girl's name down because it wasn't featured on here. Where is it? Aguri Rice. I'm sorry if I pronounce the names wrong, but and their sort of relationship with each other is sort of the main drive of the film, and emotional drive, and they just make a really good on-screen pair, and he just nails it. It's a great performance, and it's a performance I can definitely see him getting nominated for an actor award for best actor. It was that great, and everyone else, and the sort of and Aguri Rice, she's a very young actress, and it's a very demanding role for her as well, because she's has in a film where so much really dark and depressing stuff happens around her, and sights that some kids shouldn't be seeing, but she handles it like a pro. She's amazing. Like, she's definitely one of the best child actors I've seen recently. I haven't seen her in anything else, but she was terrific. She nailed her role. She was fantastic. And the film has a lot of great other Australian actors in sort of smaller roles sprinkled throughout, like Lennon. Sorry, I just got their names down here so I wouldn't forget. Like Daniel Henschel, who's really terrific and chilling in Snowtown. Lynette Curran, Sarah Snook, and David Field. Like, all these actors, and a few others as well, and these actors do really well with their performances. And yeah, that was sort of the main drive of the story. I think the film could have brought something new to the end of the world genre. Like I said, it doesn't add anything that we haven't already seen before, but that doesn't bother me as long as I think the film does it well. Then I can, and I think the film does it well. So it's a solid, really engaging, and at times very powerful, if depressing, end of the world drama. And I definitely say it's worth checking out, and it's definitely is a good stepping stone for the film's director, Zach Hilditch. I can definitely see him going on to bigger and better things after this film. And it's a really solid, good debut for him. It's worth checking out. If I had to rate this film, I give this one about a 3.5. It probably would have been higher if it was, like I said, it had a bit more, did something a bit more with its premise. But overall, it's a pretty solid film. Well, that's the end of my 6th edition of my MIFF video reviews. Keep a lookout very soon for my 7th video reviews. I haven't decided, in which I'll be discussing the documentary The Act of Killing, and as well as the psychological thriller Magic. So keep a lookout for that one, and I'll see you guys very soon. See you, everyone.